What is something that you were warned about when you were younger that you now feel was exaggerated? I wonder if it's even possible for someone to find that record. Is it really permanent? Does a record of that principal's office visit still exist at all? Of course, the real permanent record is the shit people are posting online. That shit might end up actually coming back to haunt you decades later. You're absolutely right. My job includes doing preliminary security checks on new employees before passing their information along to our government clients. No one can access anything before you were 18 years old, not even for top secret clearance, but having a Facebook friend with an Islamic name by itself can delay your clearance for a few weeks. It might even cost you your clearance depending upon who his friends are. When my 5th grade teacher told us that 6th grade would be a lot harder, haha, so true. I heard this lie throughout my entire school life. Laugh now kids, because once you're in current grade level +1, your teachers won't put up with this kind of behavior. My 8th grade teacher kept telling us how scary high school was and how unprepared we all were. She told us that freshmen were to be hunted at the beginning of the school year. She told us that we'd probably get beaten up just because we were new. She told us that we'd have to run from class to class because we'd be a target. She told us we'd all be back visiting her and saying how sorry we were and how much we miss middle school. Her source was her daughter, who was like 3 years older than us. Fast forward to my first day of high school. I got assigned 2 seniors to show me around the school and be my buddy for the first couple of months. Literally one kid tried to mess with the freshman and like the whole school was like, dude, what are you doing? Fuck you, Linda. High school was alright and nobody got hunted. I had an identical thing with school in general. Whenever we're on the verge of graduation, elementary school to secondary school to college, they would always talk about how teachers at the next level would have a tough love, we don't care attitude. There were some elements of truth, but a lot of what they said turned out to be laughably wrong. I think it was just meant to scare the true slackers straight. Yeah, I was led to believe the professors in college would be complete assholes. Turns out, they were just regular assholes like me and everyone else. My college professors were often nicer and more understanding than those in high school. Agreed, in many ways, I felt that my professors treated me as an equal and an actual person that goes through the same shit they do in life. Apart from infamous quicksand, I thought it would be a bigger problem being stuck in the Alps and having to drink alcohol from a St. Bernard's necklace. Also, cannibalism was a huge concern in late elementary to early middle school days. It was highly unlikely we'd ever crash in the Andes or that our wagon train would get stuck in the mountains in winter, but for some reason all the kids in my school were concerned about it. Should we eat someone? Could we actually do it if we had to? Who should we eat first? The fat kid will keep, but we don't want the muscular guy to lose too much weight. We were pretty fucked up, I'm now realizing. My mom was obsessed with the idea that all bad shit only happened after midnight, so that was my ironclad curfew. Guess what, Mom? A ton of bad shit has happened to me in broad daylight. If the movie Gremlins ever raised an existential question in my jellyfish brain, it has to be this one: when does after midnight stop? 11:37, 13:15? How do the Gremlins know what time zone they're in? How about daylight savings time? The clues in the name. They work on GMT, Gremlin Mean Time. When I started my job I didn't have a car. Got off work at 2 a.m., went to the gym, then took the first bus of the day home at 4:30 a.m. A couple of my older co-workers were very upset by this and went to the boss, without speaking to me first, and demanded my schedule be changed. Because they were worried about me, the boss, without speaking to me, went to her boss and got my schedule change approved. I didn't want a schedule change. I have a sleep disorder and have to work at night. and I've been taking the city bus for about 15 years. The safest buses of the day were the first buses of the day. I was told I had to change my schedule and was not given a choice. They said I could switch to day shift, which begins at 5 a.m. So apparently taking the bus home at 4 a.m. is dangerous, but going to work on the bus at 4 a.m. is perfectly safe, because the imaginary murderers and rapists hiding in the bushes waiting to attack me won't bother someone going to work. They only bother people going home. I think that's their logic. Forced to buy a car because of some nosy bitch who never took a bus in her life and is afraid of the dark SMH and BTW when a coworker who lived 25 miles away had her car break down for an extended period of time. You know what I did? I went and picked her ass up and took her home every night. I didn't go to the boss and demand her schedule be changed. I live less than 5 miles from work. Interesting how the people who were so concerned about me couldn't be bothered to give me a ride. Talking to people online, and then meeting them, I would never have met my partner, got my job, had my hobby, had any of my friends, traveled anywhere I got an Uber to if I hadn't. I am 100% serious. Every single aspect of my adult life is because of joining a single local Yahoo group and going to a gathering. Everything from where I've lived, to who I've been friends with, to the man I married, to the children I have raised has all stemmed from 2 people I met in that group. I just teared up looking at my best friend thinking how I wouldn't know her except for me having met those 2 people. My parents both smoked before having kids, and my mom raised me on stories about how the first time she smoked a cigarette, she coughed so badly that she threw up. It made staying away from smoking cigarettes pretty easy, because I didn't want to puke. Once I was in college I brought up the story to her and she blinked like an owl caught in the sunlight. "Wait, you believed me?" she said. "I was just trying to get you to not smoke. If smoking made me vomit, why do you think I smoked for 15 years? Good job, Mom." I could definitely see throwing up the first time you smoke a cigarette, especially if it's a really strong one. Cigarettes taste horrible and the nicotine makes you feel lightheaded and nauseous if it's your first time. I didn't throw up but I coughed my guts out. Same thing with the first time I tried weed. Coughed for what felt like eternity. Getting written up at work. Turns out that permanent work record does not exist, and will not follow you from job to job for the rest of your life, or your school permanent record like all the tropes in shows and movies. No one cares that you pushed little Billy down in 4th grade. I remember my teachers always scaring me saying if I misbehave it'll go on my permanent record. As if some potential employer is going to be like, "You're highly qualified for this job but unfortunately we can't hire you since you pushed Billy back in 4th grade. You're telling me that I could have assaulted Billy all I wanted in 4th grade? Talk about wasted opportunities." My 4-year-old niece lectured me the other day about not having a fire ladder in my 2nd story and fire extinguishers strategically placed through my house. I mean, she's not wrong, but it still stung. Edit. Yes, I will be getting some more fire equipment next month. I'll be sure to show her so she knows her tiny voice got heard. I mean, I have a fire ladder in my house and I'm 90% sure I would just be jumping out the window if there were an actual fire. Learning how to land would be a better investment. We learned stop, drop and roll. I didn't pay much attention. Years later, in my 20s, I caught on fire, panicked and started running around, increasing the flames. Thankfully a friend of mine chased me down, tackled me and rolled me around until the fire went out. If I caught on fire today I'd probably still do the wrong thing. Lol. Yo, that was one hell of a friend to literally bodily tackle a man on fire to save him. What a homie. How many times do you get a legit good reason to tackle that one dumb shit friend? Most useful thing I learned from the fire safety stuff was how to check if something was hot without touching it. Hold the back of your hand near it and you can feel the radiant heat much better than any other way. Handy for me who has to occasionally handle pieces of metal of varying degrees of hotness. Playing with yourself will make you go blind. Sure, my eyesight has declined over the decades, but it's absolutely been worth it. My mom said some of her friends growing up were told lies like that. One friend was apparently told if she touched herself she would go crazy. My mom told me that this girl did go crazy because she was obsessed with trying to not touch herself. Like after she peed she had to make sure her hands didn't touch anywhere. And this actually drove her crazy. Of course, I don't know if this is true or just a wild exaggeration from my mom. But she did seem sad when she told me that, so I think it might have been mostly true. The majority of those claims can be traced back to the same kind of quack medicine Kellogg was into. You know, the man who invented cornflakes to make people stop jacking off? The guy who popularized male circumcision because he thought it made boys not get off. The guy who advocated staunchly for using acid on little girls' clits specifically so they couldn't enjoy sex later in life. Sorry, I just listened to the Behind the Bastards episodes about him. It really did a great job explaining how Christian Puritanism and 1800s medicine both somehow revolved around jerk and the gherkin. Oh. And Kellogg was also a strong supporter of eugenics. That's not related to masturbation, but I wanted to mention it anyway. Fuck Kellogg. If you are not a model student and don't have excellent grades, you will never amount to anything in life. I was a model student and had excellent grades. I haven't amounted to much due to crippling anxiety and depression. Yay, I once saw it said that gifted students either became doctors, lawyers, or adults with crippling anxiety. Teaching kids to base their self-worth on academic achievement is essentially a high-risk, high-reward maneuver. You might give them the mentality to reach the top of the non-business income earners, but more likely you will scar them for life when they don't get there and have to live with not being okay with being mediocre. I once saw it said that gifted students either became doctors, lawyers, or adults with crippling anxiety, or doctors, lawyers with crippling anxiety. Drug dealers. I thought people would force that drugs down my throat until I was a broke addict. I have been offered it a few times in high school, but funny enough they were all very wholesome interactions. My favorite was a guy who I had never spoken to, who had just learned I was chronically ill, and he said that if I ever wanted to try anything he would give it to me for free and would help me to do it safely since he knew I didn't do drugs. It was just a very pure moment and I will never forget that look of kindness and concern in his eyes. I've since been around many drug dealers. I think everyone in the Netherlands has, and have never been forced, tempted or manipulated to do drugs. Stranger rape. It still happens and is devastating, but most rapes are committed by someone known to the victim, not by a masked stranger popping out of the bushes. I think that emphasis on stranger fear discourages people from seeing red flags in situations with people they know. Wasn't it then found out that stranger danger did a lot of harm because when people were in actual danger they were less likely to seek out help from stranger because they were afraid of them. Also because it focused so much on strangers that it kinda further reinforced that non-strangers are safe. Now your creepy uncle who you would be wary of is just a creepy uncle, not a stranger, so he must be safe. My philosophy is generally that the average person you approach on the street will be reasonable, honest, and good-intentioned. The average person who approaches you on the street is much more likely to be trying to hurt or scam you. Edit. Yes, that makes you the creep, I guess. Exercise caution in general, but especially if they approached you. One time this much older and sketchy guy came up to me while I was pumping gas. He starts making conversation about random things and was really insistent on interacting in spite of my non-committal and yeah responses. When my tank was full, he tried to get me to hand him the nozzle before I clicked it off at the pump. He reached for it with the "let me have that, hon. I've got to pump my gas too." I held onto it and hung it back up on the pump, making sure I heard the click and the sale was closed out. He stalked off in kind of a huff while I got my receipt and got out of there. To this day I'm like, WTF the balls on that guy. Same for child abductions. The vast majority of missing children are custodial interference or runaways. Only about 100 stereotypical stranger danger kidnappings happen every year in the US. It's also been shown that children being overly worried about stranger danger will prevent them in many cases from seeking out help when they are lost or in trouble. Better to teach kids good common sense than catchphrases. Instead of teaching kids to be scared of all strangers, it can be good to teach them that when they're lost or in trouble to first look for those in authority, and if none are in the immediate area, look for parents with children. Oh, you reminded me, people in my country use police as a boogeyman. So, if a kid is misbehaving, the police is gonna take you away. Result: when my brother got lost in a mall, he kept hiding from every security guard and it took us ages to find him, because he had got lost by misbehaving. Thankfully, there were guards at the doors too and he didn't wander into the street. But damn, how hard high school is. Teachers always said you would have to smarten up in high school and you would barely have time for anything. I crocheted my teacher a sweater for his dog in class once. I think he'll be okay. I barely did any homework in high school, still graduated with a high 70% average, which is still pretty decent in Canada. So when they told me the same stuff about college, I didn't listen. Pro tip: at least for a STEM major, they mean it for college. Did the same mistake lol. School didn't prepare me for the actual challenge uni is. Depends on the school. More rigorous schools expect students to take multiple app courses. I had college friends who said college was a breeze compared to their private high school. They probably come from anonymous surveys given out to 12 years olds. Those surveys never factored in that teenagers lie all the time on them because they think it's funny. I know this because I was one of those 12 years old surveyed and all my friends joked afterwards that we smoked crack. We didn't coordinate to do it. It just seemed like such a stupid question to ask. It is impossible to accurately survey kids. They will mark off answers to make it appear normal so as not to get it thrown out, but toss in one or two WTF answers. If anything, it was a middle school protest about being made to do it in the first place. Same is true for those reference tests to test how well kids are learning. The smart kids Christmas tree it and then go to sleep. There is no gain from trying and no harm from failing, so then why try? The reason was because they massively overstated the danger of drugs. The kids that tried pot once and realized it didn't immediately throw their life into an unrecoverable death spiral were like, well, what the fuck else did they lie about? Turns out when you fill your information with big, scary lies, people go in literally the opposite direction later as they realize you're untrustworthy. This is the real answer, maybe not the most practical one, but if you get a job waiting tables, bartending on the weekends for even a few weeks, you'll meet multiple people with drug hookups. I kinda miss working in restaurants, definitely not enough to ever go back, but at every office job I've worked since, there's this compulsion to present the most squeaky clean version of yourself to coworkers, whereas working in restaurants you'd have a coworker come in and immediately tell you, yeah, I caught my girlfriend cheating on me with my brother yesterday. After work I'm gonna scoop up an 8-ball and head across the street to get shit-faced. Wanna come? Kinda miss that total honesty and the shared commiseration of, well, this gig fucking sucks but at least you guys are cool. This, and just pressure to do drugs in general. I was under the impression that some villains were going to actively try to force me to do drugs, and I know that is a legit concern when it comes to people slipping something in a drink, but this was in elementary school. Most of my life, People who offered me drugs were trying to be nice, and if I said no, they were happy to keep more drugs for themselves. For real, person doing drugs/drinking, hey, you want a beer, hit of this joint? Person not doing drugs/drinking, no thank you. Person doing drugs/drinking, no problem. Can I get you a soda or something? I've been on both sides of the conversation, always at a party, gathering of sorts, and it always goes the same. Any reasonable person will not care whether or not you also partake with them. They just want you to enjoy yourself too.